Hey, Earthlings, Earthlings, Earthlings. We're live on the Twinternet. Welcome along. This is a pretty impromptu broadcast show, whatever you want to call it. In fact, Danny just announced he didn't know what he was talking about 5 minutes ago. So.
Well, he never does he? So it's nothing new.
Thanks, Ronnie.
All right, anytime, mate. Don't worry.
I have with me two famous vegan activists, of course. Oh, blimey, I've got the sound on this. Hang on.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
There's not more than one Roger on here.
Yeah, sack the guy. I've got it on the phone. So two vegan activists. Of course, I'm an academic, so I haven't done any activism in my life. So I'm an ivory tower activism. I said in my PhD or my MA, not quite sure which one. You don't expect me to be in the ivory tower because that's the last place that I'll be, which was true, of course. So we're going to talk about a Twitter feed that I saw this morning, and it was about why aren't people vegan. Before that, a couple of announcements. This is part of a series, at least a hopeful series, because Ronnie, it's your 50th year of being vegan, right? So congratulations, young man.
Yes, indeed, and I'm still alive, or at least I think so.
Oh, I don't know about that. Let's not push it too far.
Well, my mother said I'd be dead within a year, so
she was wrong.
She was slightly wrong. Yeah,
49 years wrong.
49 years. Unless I'm walking around as a zombie for 49 years, a vegetable eating zombie, possibly.
Doing that thing like grains instead of brains, isn't it? Grains.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And also, the Cranky Vegan has just dropped Ronnie's first part of Ronnie's interview for a series which is called Radicals and Revolutionaries. So it's radicalsandrevolutionaries.com. So Ronnie is the third episode, and the first two was somebody called Dave Wetton, who started campaigning in 1961. And he was one of the kind of developers, really, not the founders, but the developers of the Hunt Saboteurs. And you knew Dave, Ronnie, and that was how you got involved, really, Sabs, wasn't it?
Yeah, I knew Dave very well. Still know Dave. A great guy, and very influential within the Hunt Saboteurs movement,
Hi, Joanna.
And it's well worth listening to, to his, especially for people who don't really know very much about the history of the movement. It's well worth listening to the two podcasts that they did with him.
Yeah.
So what's this been dropped on? The Cranky Vegan?
The Cranky Vegan is doing a series which is called Radicals and Revolutionaries with some other person that I can't remember the name of, so apologies for that. And it's really kind of like going through the history. So it'll be moving through the Hunt Saboteurs, then it'll be ALF, probably the Liberation Leagues into SHAC, that kind of stuff. And so I think they just wanted to register someplace where you can check out the history of the movement, because as we all know, a lot of people don't know that, and so it's good for them to know. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
If people can't remember the link that Roger's just said, if they just go on the Cranky Vegan Facebook page,
there's a link to it,
then there'll be a
it is a bit confusing, Ronnie, because there is another Radicals and Revolutionaries podcast as well, so you can end up at the wrong one. I've done that a couple of times, so it is a bit confusing in that sense. Anyway, so we're going to be looking at this. Vegan activists, are we preaching and bullying and ramming and forcing? So the ramming bits, and I know I get comments on that. Was that you always get that thing, you're ramming your views down our throats, kind of issue, and the issue about vegans forcing. It's an ongoing thing, especially. You'll know this, Danny, from TikTok. It's one of the main complaints about vegans that they're forcing people to go vegan, and of course, it's not possible. Not only is it not true, it's not even possible.
Well, what surprises me on TikTok is this, right? So you've got millions upon millions of different accounts on TikTok, right? Covering subjects from magnet fishing, which I'm going to have a go at. I've bought the kit, so I want to go magnet fishing in canals and seeing what I can find in there. Hopefully not too many
I'm
guns.
trying to find magnets.
No, you use a magnet on a rope and you
Yeah.
throw it in, and like, so anyway, there's all sorts of things on TikTok. So these people who are saying that we are ramming things down their throat and forcing our beliefs on them are searching out vegan content, coming onto that vegan content, viewing the vegan content, and then commenting on the vegan content. So to me, it's what, like, who's doing what to who, you know? It's crazy, absolutely crazy. What you're doing here if you don't want us to tell you how it is, you know?
Well, that's linked to that idea, isn't it? You know, some people come on and go, I don't care, or no one cares. And you go, well, you're here writing that. So obviously there's something going on. And it's always been said that the ones who don't take any notice of you whatsoever, they see the word vegan and it just doesn't even register. They're the ones you got a big problem that you got a problem with.
Because the other things, I think it's a guilt thing. I think the reason those people come on there is that deep down they know really that they should be vegan, and but they're fighting against it, and coming on and making those comments is part of their way of fighting against it, against what they really know they should be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, from a social psychological level, because they're in the majority, but they know that they're kind of agreeing with the position of a minority. And so that kind of puts them in a bit of a difficult position, because it's a little bit like, you know, there's a sociologist called Zygmunt Bauman, and he says, you're swimming, you know, along the river, and then you have a bit of a conversion, and then the idea is that you got to turn around and start swimming against the tide. And that makes your life a lot more difficult. And of course, that's true. And so, you know, if you've got a minority, even if you agree with them, you've then got the issue of how much of this are we going to, you know, go for, kind of thing.
But that comes on to this subject as well, I think.
Yeah,
because you see, you've got a minority within society as a whole. Vegans are a minority within society as a whole, and within what you might call the vegan movement, people that are vegan or call themselves vegan, the minority within that are the activists. So I think there's a similar psychology between non-vegans who are resistant to veganism and vegans who are resistant to vegan activism. And I think you've got the same thing going on where you know, the ones that kind of make the noise and the ones that complain about, oh, you know, you're ramming down people's throat, and, you know, and bullying and forcing and all these other things, preaching. They're the people, I think, that really deep down know that they should be activists, know that they should be doing more than just being passively vegan, but kind of don't want to. And so that's why they then react, and that's why they then comment. Exactly the same as those non-vegans are commenting on the vegan.
Although
post.
to be fair, Ronnie, and we're going to see this in a few minutes, is that some people are putting reasons for why they can't be, or even that they shouldn't be. And so, as I said in the kind of description, you know, do any of those, you know, be interested to find out whether you would think any of those kind of reasons have got any merit, because I mean, obviously, all three of us probably would agree that the more vegan activists we have, the better. And especially with your position, Ronnie, because you want vegan activism to be everywhere all the time. And so that means we need a lot of people doing it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a counter sort of thought about that as well. I mean, do we want a lot of people to be vegan? Do we want a hell of a lot of people to be vegan? And are we really worried that every single one of those people who are now vegan are not active? Yes, we'd like them all to be active, but the population of this country, if we could get 50% of the population of this country to follow a vegan lifestyle and not necessarily have them all be active, would that be a bad thing?
No, that'd be a good thing. But you see, the thing is, what you got to think of is like, how did any of us become vegan? We became vegan, and it's the same with everyone that became vegan. Became vegan because we received information of some sort. It might have been a leaflet, it might have been a poster, it might have been more so these days, it might have been a video on YouTube, even perhaps an advert. There's some vegan adverts now. It was information. And so the more information we get out there about veganism and about the reasons to go vegan, the more people are going to go vegan. Because the other thing is that often people have to see the information more than once. The first time they see information about veganism might not affect them very much. But if they continually see that information, then eventually it could make a difference. I mean, this is the philosophy of the advertising industry, isn't it? Where you see adverts repeated so much, and they spend millions of pounds. So obviously, there's some back up to that in terms of research, isn't it? The reason why they do that.
Repetition is very important, which is why McDonald's still advertise. I mean, you would think of all the companies in the entire world that don't need to advertise anymore, it'd be McDonald's, but they advertise because repetition is important. They've got to keep visibility, really. It's visibility.
Yeah. And we were also up against them because, this talk about forcing preaching and all that. Well, what are the dairy industry doing, and what are the meat industry doing, and what are all these other industries that press animals doing? They're constantly advertising, they're constantly pushing their products, aren't they? And so we have to counter that. And we, they've got lots of money to put those adverts out, that propaganda out. We haven't got nearly as much money as them, but what we have got is numbers. We've got all these vegans, hundreds of thousands of vegans, certainly, in the UK, and obviously far more throughout the world. They've got the money, we've got the numbers, and so we need to use our numbers to counteract their money. And the way to do that is if all vegans can spread information about veganism in whatever way they can, then we can counteract the propaganda.
But that's only one way, Ronnie. I mean, going back to what Danny said, right, is that obviously if you had 50% of the population of any country demanding a plant-based food, that'd be good, but it'd be better for them all to be vegans, and it'd be better for them all to be vegan activists. But say they weren't, and they were just in this sliding scale of just the plant-based eaters, that means that you would have a situation like Veganuary, where the companies themselves would take on the advertising, and they'd start doing TV adverts and the big billboards, the kind of stuff that we as vegans couldn't actually do. So there is that as well, in the sense that, if we're talking about vegan activists with leaflets compared with, I don't know, Morrison's with TV adverts, which ones are going to get to the public?
Well,
Sorry, Ronnie. I was just going to say, but it's funny when you do become vegan for ethical reasons. Now we're going to be pragmatic here. People do go vegan. Well, what they think is vegan for the environment. People do go vegan for what they think is a vegan healthy diet, right? So we can't get away from that. That's fact. Hi there. It's Ventnor. Hi, Ventnor. We can't get away from that fact. But some people, when they go vegan and they see the reality, the ethical, the moral side of it, they've got to say something about it. And I think a massive percentage of people who do go vegan for eventually, for the ethical reasons, will be active because they can't possibly see and know what's going on without saying anything. So I don't think that's a problem. And I think there is a small percentage of people who find it hard to be active for certain reasons. For example, I'll give you an example of a guy who donates to me personally for my activism, doing different things. He sends me money and says, can you do a video? Can you spend this amount of money in the supermarket and show everybody how much you can get for 50 quid in Sainsbury's, say? And I think what it is with this guy is that he wants to be active, but it will affect his business if he is. So therefore, he sort of gets me to do his activism by proxy for him.
Yeah, fair enough.
So he does eventually do. But I think there are people out there who, for example, I've got an Instagram page now, and it was for my acting. I put all my show reels on there, all little jobs I'd done. And now the veganism has taken over. And I think I'm going to have to open another channel about my acting. I don't want to intertwine them, and it's not because I'm ashamed of veganism. It's just that those people might see how active I am and may think I'll be a liability if they give me this certain acting job. And
hey, what if you get a job as a vegan though, Danny?
Listen, I've already been offered a role from a vegan director because I'm vegan and because obviously I've got talents,
Yeah.
But
so you'll have to put that one on both channels.
Well, yeah, so there is. I mean, we have got to be realistic, and we've got to be realistic about people's lives. We've got to be realistic about the fact that people do long shifts and come home, and the last thing we want to do is be arguing with meat eaters all fucking night on Facebook.
That's going to come up. So let's crack on with this then, because some of those points are going to come up, which I think is interesting. So this is the setup then. So I've taken all the names off it because I don't want to embarrass anybody, and it's also to protect the guilty. So I've taken the names off, but these are the two kind of things that set this up. So the person was saying that they don't understand so-called vegans who don't try and get others to become vegan. And then they said that when they first became vegan, they came out swinging for the animals and this kind of stuff. So a lot of people said, yeah, right on. And a lot of people said no to that and asked a few questions. What's the clarification? And so the second one is a clarification. I mean that vegans who never speak up for the animals or mention that they're vegan should really take a moment to think about why they're vegan in the first place. So my first question just on this setup thing is about this kind of suggestion that there's kind of totally silent vegans who never say anything to anybody. And I wrote in and said, I've been at this like 43 years and I don't think I know a silent vegan. But then I suppose I wouldn't, would I? But it's kind of, do you think that there are people who are totally silent and won't talk to anybody about their veganism?
I think there may be. But it's not a question of really, to me, of whether people are totally silent or not. It's a question of all vegans doing their best to spread the vegan message according to their own personal circumstances. So, that's a little bit more than very, very, very occasionally mentioning you're vegan, isn't it? That's kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, if someone's vegan, they are going to be asked why they're vegan. They're going to be asked why they're, not having a piece of chicken on their plate, or having milk in their tea.
Well, then it's a question of whether you welcome those questions
in a social situation, and it's kind of how you. I mean, I know a guy who he's vegan. I mean, he's genuinely vegan because you can only be vegan for animal liberation. If you're not vegan for that, you're not vegan, right? First of all, you're plant-based. I mean, he is vegan because he's concerned about animals. But when he's asked, why are you having plant milk in your tea? He'll say that it's because he's dairy intolerant, and that's not true. It's because he doesn't want to get into a discussion about the ethics of it, and I think that's very sad, because this discussion about the ethics of it is really a very simple discussion, and it's not something that people need to be afraid of.
I agree, and but I mean, this is assuming as well. This is generalizing, and it's basically saying that they assume that there's lots and lots of vegans who are silent, and I don't think that's the case. I think there are the odd one or two people here and there who were sort of coerced into keeping quiet because of the geography. Now, for example, up here in the north, in Oldham, where I live, it's not a common thing. Veganism isn't a common thing. It's not. I wouldn't stay quiet, obviously, but it's not as accepted as it would be in somewhere like, say, Bristol. There's also people's personalities. You've got people who may suffer mentally with mental problems. They may suffer depression. They may suffer like a severe shyness or whatever, and they find it really sort of causes anxiety if they do declare that they're vegan and then get hit with a load of questions off a group of people that they sat with. But I don't think this is a lot of people. I think it's assuming that there's absolutely shitloads of silent vegans out there when there isn't. And I think it's just the odd few that can't do it and won't do it, or it's not that they don't want to. It's just that they're not built for it. They don't feel like it's them, even though they'd want to. And but again, those people could quite easily set up anonymous accounts on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and do their activism that way. That's always a technique as well. But I don't think it's a widespread problem, and I don't think there are many vegans that are totally silent.
I tend to agree with that. Just before we go on, folks, anybody in the chat, if you want to just say yes that you want to, I can give you the StreamYard link if you want to come on. We're quite happy to have guests on. So let's go on to one of the first responses then. The first one talks about gatekeeping veganism, and this is an interesting one because they're basically saying we shouldn't raise. I mean, this is going to be really interesting for you, Ronnie, because of your definition. When you raise the bar for what being a vegan is, you reduce the number of people who can become one. I mean, this is almost straight out of Tobias Leonhardt's book, and so they're saying it's fine to be an activist, but it shouldn't be a requirement. Whereas you argued with that, Ronnie, didn't you?
Well, there's two things I'd say to that. First of all, being a vegan is kind of what being a vegan is. According to the first definition of veganism, which is a guy called Leslie Cross came up with the definition, I think, in 1951. Veganism is a philosophy of animal liberation, right? So when someone says I'm vegan for the environment, I'm vegan for health, well, they're actually not vegan, and they're just not, because that's not what it is. If we're going to look, try to determine what veganism is and what it means, we have to look back to the people who kind of came up with the vegan definition, and it is what it is. It is what it is. If somebody wants to eat a vegan diet for the environment, that's great. That is a really positive thing. But they're not actually vegan, and that's just how it is. But I do think that as has been said already, that somebody can adopt a vegan diet for the environment or for health, and then through because they've done that, then they can learn all this stuff and become a genuine vegan. In other words, they can adopt the philosophy of animal liberation and become a genuine vegan. The other thing about people being active is that, first of all, if someone is a genuine vegan, in other words, they're a vegan because they believe in animal liberation, then surely they'd want that to be the case. They'd want a world where other animals are liberated from oppression by humans, right? And so if they want that, surely they would also want to do their best to bring that about. And doing their best to bring that about is trying to spread the vegan message in whatever way they can. And that needn't be shouty. It needn't be. I think that one of the problems is that people associate activism with kind of high profile stuff, with being out on the street, maybe doing a demonstration or doing a cube or something which is kind of high profile. And it needn't be that way. It can be just something as simple as door dropping, or making sure you've always got leaflets on you that you can leave in public places, leave on public transport. Always be mindful of what can I do according to my own circumstances to promote veganism as much as possible. And I think if all vegans were to take that on board, we'd be flying.
I mean, could I just put something forward? I'm always playing devil's advocate, as you know, guys. So don't kick me off the stream or anything. Okay, so
I've got my finger on the button. Go on.
Are you? So when people, would you say that when people go vegan and they boycott all the industries that fuel the animal exploitation. In their eyes, what would you say to people that say that in their eyes, they've made a massive change to their lifestyles? They've gone through a lot of effort. Why would that not be enough for them to boycott the whole of the industry that produces the animal exploitation? Why is that not enough? What would you say to those people?
Well, it wasn't enough for me. I can give an example, from my own life when I went vegan. As soon as I learned about, I'd been vegetarian 2.5 years already, and the only reason why I didn't become vegetarian, at that stage was because I was totally unaware of the slaughter and suffering caused by the dairy and egg industries. As soon as I became aware of that, I went vegan. But immediate to me, it wasn't enough for me to be vegan, because I thought, yeah, it's great that I'm vegan. I'm no longer contributing to, to those things, and animals are going to be spared because of me not, buying into those industries, obviously. So that's great. But what about all the other people that aren't vegan? All the other people that aren't vegan that are still consuming animal products, are still supporting animal oppression, right? If I don't do something to change them, it's never going to end. It's never going to end. So it wasn't enough, for me just to become vegan. And to me, it was like, it was obvious, because I wanted animal liberation. That's why I went vegan. And you're not going to get animal liberation unless we change. I don't think we have to turn everyone vegan, and I don't think we can. I'd love to think we could, but that isn't necessary. As long as there's enough of us that are vegan, where we call the shots, where we're the kind of dominant force in society, and we say what goes, and we can pass laws and stuff to move society towards a vegan diet and to end all animal oppression. That doesn't need, if you look at the most appalling government we've got at the moment was elected by only 30% of the electorate. 30%. It was only 30% of people eligible voted for bloody Bojo, right? But if that can work for him, it can work for us. We could have a vegan government, but 30% of people vote for a vegan government, and that's it. Bang, that's it. Legislation, right? That's the end of all animal oppression. And even if you want to do it, you can't do it, because we'll be straight round your house. Do you know what I mean? And that's what
like the hunting ban.
Well, the hunting, the reason why the hunting ban isn't enforced is because you haven't got because you've got people in Parliament that don't care. But like,
because,
if we had
you've got all the people in authority who can enforce this, all taking part in the hunts anyway.
Well, a lot of them are, and they don't care. But if you had a government that was largely comprised of vegans, or there was a large percentage of vegans in there, enough to get legislation through, and enough to to get the police doing what they should be doing, there wouldn't be any hunting. Anyone went hunting, their feet wouldn't touch the ground. The same with other forms of animal pleasure, and that's what we need to aim for. And we don't need everyone to be vegan to do that. We just need to have enough people going vegan so that we run the show. That's what we need to aim for. And you're not, because you see, vegan education to me isn't just about diet change and lifestyle change. I think that's very, very important, because it affects demand, and demand affects supply. And so the more people that are vegan, you're going to have a reduction in animal farming, reduction in animals oppressed for the food industry. So that's good, but there's also a political aspect to it, because the more people that are vegan, you're going to get more vegans wanting to be politicians, and you're going to get more people willing to vote for those vegan politicians. So it doesn't just change the demand and supply situation; it also changes the political landscape.
Which has got to be done. We've got to change the culture before we can change.
Change the culture. Change the culture, because the culture is reflected in the politics, isn't it?
But going back to what Danny said, if I'm reading you right, Danny, that feeds into the supply and demand thing. In other words, if there's quite a few people who are just consistently on a plant-based diet, and also they don't buy the other products, like shampoos and all that, and they're all consistent with that, then that's going to have quite a striking effect on supply and demand. And would you say, Danny, that in itself, because I used to argue this, that in itself is a form of activism within cultural speciesism. That's quite a radical thing to do. You've gone quiet. You've got no.
Sorry, I've turned my mic off.
All right.
Can you just have a look at Michael Askew's comment as well? It's 7:22. I've got something to say about that as well. But yeah, the whole thing about transitioning to a vegan lifestyle, cutting everything out and boycotting the whole industry, I'll
bring that back up in a minute.
It does take a lot of effort. No, it doesn't matter what you say. It does take, especially if you're not a cook, if you're not a home cook, if you're used to your microwave meals and you're throwing the boiling bag of boiling water, but your chippy, your McDonald's. It's very hard for people to say, and it's a big step. And it is a form, but I do agree with Ronnie. Is that it's fine for those few to crack on like that, and they have made a big change, and they are contributing, and it is a form of activism, just being vegan itself. But we're not going to change unless everybody gets vocal. And if you can just bring Michael's, because this is linked actually. If you bring Michael's comment back up, Michael says in the vegan Discord servers, which is a chat server, if anybody doesn't know. Excuse me. I mean, quite a lot are on the autism spectrum and have very high empathy, but difficulty engaging with activism. Often they'll be patrons of vegan activists. So there you have it. This is the thing. We're not asking people to be vocal. We're not asking people to be sort of big gobs like me and Ronnie and Roger. We're not asking people to go screaming from the rafters and shouting and doing live streams and all this stuff. What we're asking people to do is just to, I would say, the best thing you can possibly do is be vocal about your veganism. And when people see you putting plant milk in your coffee at work, or see you like eating like non-meat products, and is say, yes, I am vegan, and be proud of that, and that has a big effect. And especially when people look after themselves as well, they eat a really good plant-based, whole food plant-based diet, and they look healthy. They've got a healthy glow about them. It's a nice advertisement for the health side of veganism as well, which is also a bonus. So I think it's
spray tan on us.
Yeah, put the spray. Yeah, I look very pale because my screen is pure white, and I look really, really ill. But I'm not dead. But yeah, not like you, Ronnie.
No, there's not two of us, is there, Danny?
No, I hope not, mate. Not two vegan zombies going about. But yeah, we're not asking people to sort of invade football pitches and storm into restaurants, but the very minimal people can do, and I think it's been mentioned in the comments, is maybe buy some stickers. And if you don't want to confront people and you are on the spectrum and you do find it causes anxiety to be questioned on your own life, is yes, throw some money and patronize people. Go on the Patreon accounts, give them some money to help them.
That's actually going to come up in one of the comments.
I'm preceding everything, Roger, aren't I?
You are actually. You've kind of touched on about 4 different slides that are.
That's the way my brain works. Sorry,
but one thing I'd like.
No, I mean, there's no way of knowing, so don't worry about that. Before we move on to that, though, look at the second one here. And I think this is really significant, because I said when I was writing my PhD, I said that when veganism comes up or animal rights comes up, it's very, very visceral for people, because they start to think about what they had for breakfast that day, and also what they're planning to have for dinner, because it's so, and it's not something that you probably would have if you talk about feminism, or if you talk about the environment, that kind of thing, oh, blimey, I chopped down 3 trees this morning, that kind of thing. So it's very much kind of like in your face. And I think that one problem is the second thing, where this person is saying, well, first of all, they're saying it's wrong to try and control what others eat. But the entire comment is regarding veganism as a diet. which is a mistake. And I think that if you first of all start talking about the philosophy of veganism, it kind of makes it easier for people. It does make veganism bigger, but it also makes people easier because you're not focusing directly on what they're eating all the time. You're talking about other aspects of it. And I think, therefore, this is a mistake, that if you kind of go along with this myth that veganism is a diet, you're actually making it harder for yourself to put it over. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. But obviously, the diet is a really big part of it because,
well, yeah, of course.
In most people's lives, most people, don't work in a vivisection laboratory. Most people don't, aren't working on farms or in slaughterhouses or, involved in animal racing or anything like that. The thing that most people do in their own lives that contributes to animal oppression is consuming animals. You see, that's
hold on a minute, Ronnie. Hold on a minute. A lot of people go gambling at race courses and greyhound races.
People do bet on it, but it's not in the same percentage of like almost everyone eats them. I mean, yeah, and obviously, if we are campaigning against those industries, you have to affect the gambling because the gambling does put money into it, and that's true. But the consumption of animal products is almost universal, and so that's kind of what we have to tackle. But the ways of doing this, and I'm coming back to what we were saying previously, there are some very easy ways of promoting veganism that almost everyone can do. I mean, we have people in our vegan group who are on the autism spectrum. And yet they'll still go out and deliver leaflets, put leaflets through people's doors, and that's like it's kind of really easy. And it's like we run lots of campaigns for door dropping, and we've got one going on at the moment leading up to Mother's Day about how the cow as a mother is oppressed, what happens to the calf and all that, because it's a topical time of year to promote that. Now, in our local vegan group, we've got almost 900 people. Probably half of those people are local, and they're not. We'll have non-vegans in the group if they're interested in veganism. But there's probably like at least 200 local vegans in the group, right? And we have these. What we're doing is just asking people, can you deliver a few leaflets in your local area, right? And on the previous couple of campaigns we've had of that, we've had 25 to 30 volunteers, which is kind of really good in a way. But where are the other kind of 170 people that aren't doing or volunteering to do such a really simple thing that could only take to deliver 100 leaflets, maybe takes an hour. And that's all you're asking. Really simple, easy thing. And are they kind of really saying that they're always doing something that's more important than doing that? I mean, I think with most of them that isn't the case. So kind of why aren't those vegans doing that really, really simple thing?
Well, you're asking the question which every vegan organizer asks, because if they set up a table or if you organize a demo,
exactly,
you're kind of going, where is everybody?
Exactly, yeah. Because the thing is, if those people really want animal liberation, then how's it going to come? Unless we have a lot more people doing that, was it going to happen by magic? And this is what people need to think. What they want to happen isn't going to happen by magic. They have to be part of making it happen.
Ronnie, before we move on, and keep the answer to this fairly brief, if you would, because we've got to move on. But you used to argue back in the 80s that you made a big distinction between the innocent and the not so innocent, like the butchers and all, the greyhound keepers. What you were saying, a few minutes ago. Now, do you think that distinction is gone now? Because surely there's nobody, all these consumers of other animals, how many can't have ever heard of veganism? I know some people claim that, but so do you think that innocent versus non-innocent person in terms of their animal use has gone now?
I don't think there's anyone that's not innocent, because everyone's aware. People just try to kind of not think about it, don't they, or avoid it. You know, I think it's true that everyone knows that what they're eating is as a result of animals.
Yeah, it was back in the day when we weren't talking about what they were eating. We
weren't talking. Yeah, that's right. But you see, but I think there's degrees of culpability. I think someone who promotes, someone who's who's actually promoting the consumption of other animals, somebody who's promoting the oppression of other animals, is more culpable than someone that just kind of buys into that. Consumes it. Yeah, there are degrees of culpability. I think it's very difficult to say that anyone's totally innocent because everyone knows that there are vegans around, and everyone knows that vegans don't consume animal products.
Right. So Danny, we're tapping into a couple of things that you said here. There's at least one more which is on about this. Some of us has had childhood trauma that manifests into people. I'm not quite sure. People please, and we are literally terrified of not being liked. People pleasers, yeah. So we really struggle with calling people out. Now, this is interesting, really, because first of all, there's this concept of calling people out. Whereas I think I'd say, well, you're just talking to people, educating them. So there's that one thing, and that might feed into what you said, Ronnie, about people have got this idea that you've got to be shouting on the street rather than just talking to them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so this is one of the issues that might say to people, "Oh, I kind of might like to, but I couldn't do it."
Yeah. Well, I've got something to say on that. It's linked to me personally. As you know, I'm under investigation for ADHD, and there's a lot of branches of ADHD, and one of them is it's an extreme anxiety reaction to upsetting people, believe it or not, which is the one that is part that I believe I've got. Right. And when I make people see a lot of it, I can say things and not realize. I can't judge people's reaction to how when I'm talking to them, whether it's upsetting them, and unless it's really extreme. So I don't know when I've upset people, and when they turn around and go ape shit at me and like oh, you really offended me, that hurts me to the core, and I feel really anxious about it. And you wouldn't think it looking at me and the way I act. I mean, I do battle it, I do fight it, and but it is hard, and it is a hard thing to sort of get over. So yeah, I suppose there are some things that have happened in your childhood, and you want to fit in, and you struggle to call people out, and you're a people pleaser, and there are those personalities. But again, we go back to, you don't have to show your face. You can be anonymous. You do not have to be the face of veganism. You can be the voice of veganism. You can be the text of veganism. You can be some anonymous guy with a silly name on Facebook, and you can even troll them and really upset them without any comebacks. So there's always a way around it. That I don't think there's any excuse not to be active. There's no excuse, because we've got so many platforms that we can anonymously put out the message without any comebacks.
Yeah, well, you both do street work, as I do. Do you get the feeling that you really upset and offend people, or are you just having an educational conversation with them?
Sorry, Ronnie, I'll jump in again. I had a conversation with a guy, and it's going to be coming up on Wednesday. A bit of self-promotion here on my channel, Grumpy Vegan Grandad. There is a video of that one. I don't know whether it's Wednesdays or Saturdays. What was your channel
called again, Danny?
Grumpy Vegan Grandad.
Oh, right.
Okay, just Grumpy Vegan Grandad on YouTube.
Grumpy Vegan Grandad,
just in case.
You've heard it here first.
So the video is dropping either Wednesday or Saturday. I don't know which one it is now. I can't remember which order I've done them in. But I'm talking to this guy, and he was a really pleasant guy, and he's a member of the RSPB. And he was talking about the loss of certain wading birds up in the northeast. And then he's looking at the chickens and said, oh, and I eat chickens. And I was talking to him, and then all of a sudden at one point he said, well, now you've said that to me, I'm really sort of like, you lost me now, you've lost me. And that caused a shitload of anxiety in me. And I thought, well, what have I done? What have I said? And then I started trying to sort of please him. I tried bringing him back. But it's that shock of upsetting someone. But he was joking. He was a very dry guy. And you can see it happen when you watch the video. But yeah, it does have its pitfalls when you're talking to people on the street. And no, I don't think I do personally upset people because I don't go down that road. I go for a different approach and I read the room before I speak to people. And if they want to go down the environmental avenues or they want to go down the health avenues, I'm very well versed in both and I will talk to them about that, but then I will bring it back to animal liberation. I will bring it back to animal rights. I will bring it back that way. But I don't think we say anything that offends or should offend anybody. We're not, I don't tell people, I called him a hypocrite because he was in the RSPB and he was a bird spotter and he was eating chickens. But that's not offensive. He knows he's a hypocrite, and it's one of the biggest woo hypocrite alerts going. If you're in a society that's supposed to protect birds, and you are enjoying watching the species of birds out there, you shouldn't really be eating them, should you? Really?
The key to it, though, Danny, because the RSPB, they'd be classified at least partly as a conservationist group. And so consequently, they'll be interested in the species, but not the individuals. And so chickens are not an issue for them because there's millions of them.
Yes, but I mean, that's not the point though, is it? The point is...
It is for them.
Yeah, for them, but this guy on the street thinks he's protecting birds by being in the RSPB. I don't think a lot of common people who join these groups, like they think the RS, like I did. I thought the RSPCA was a wonderful group who helped save animals and rescued animals and rescued wildlife, and they're amazing for animals. I thought they were great, and that's what I bought into. And this guy bought into RSPB, thinking, and it's the disconnection there of him like worried about the loss of this wildlife, as opposed to then he's going eating chicken. I see what you're saying, Roger. Yeah, but I mean, the hypocrisy is just
internal logic, though, Danny, is sound because they are a conservation group, the same as the RSPCA. They want to remove the animal cruelty, but they don't want to remove the animal use. That's our bag. Yeah. So there's no problem. So when you've got Earthling Ed calling out the RSPCA, he's not fully understanding what they are, which is just a traditional animal welfare group, and so their job is to reduce the amount of cruelty, which is what they set about doing. They've got guides. The RSPB, their job would be to, partly at least, conserve species of birds. And the ones that they would be most concerned about would be the ones of which there'll be the least individuals. So, chickens are going to be right at the end of their concerns.
Well, they need to take protection out of the title then, don't they?
They do support the killing of certain birds. If they think that a non-native species is a threat to a native species, they'll support the killing of that bird. So they're not, it's a protection, like the RSPCA was often referred to as a Society for the Protection of Certain Animals. The RSPB is for the protection of certain birds.
Yeah, they support killing ruddy ducks, I think, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and I think other ones as well. So it's not to do with the importance of those animals as individuals. It's like saying, all right, we're going to kill Chinese people to preserve pygmy people because there's like billions and billions of Chinese people, but not many pygmy people. It's that same kind of, that same totally irrational approach, isn't it?
Well, only if the Chinese people were killing the pygmy people, but that's another argument.
Well, yes, in terms of in terms of, I mean, there may be a kind of general sense in which one group of people are a threat to another group of people because the resources on the earth are scarce and there's not enough to go round. So in general terms, you could possibly argue that.
Okay, well, look, we're coming up to 50 minutes, so let's go and keep this rolling. Ronnie, going back to what Danny addressed, are you calling people out, or are you just talking to them and educating them?
I'm calling people out. I wouldn't have a go at someone for not being vegan. I mean, my approach is to provide people with information, and then they have to make their own decision based on that information. and really people need to think. If people are going to become vegan, they need to think that it's a decision they made themselves.
You're a seed planter.
And yes, it is. It's a question, and I this is where I think literature is really important, because unless you're going to spend like a whole day talking to someone, you're never going to be able to really cover all the issues. And so, I believe in having good literature, that you can have a brief conversation with someone, and you've only got limited time to talk to people in most circumstances anyway. So it's good to give that person something to take away with them. I'm always kind of banging the drum for a booklet by Animal Aid called Plant-Based Cooking on a Budget, and obviously we're in the UK. We're in the UK, and
they're always using my channel to promote Animal Aid.
Well, I think Animal Aid, yeah. I mean, I don't agree with everything that Animal Aid have done. I mean, the CCTV campaigning for CCTV slaughterhouses was kind of a ridiculous thing, obviously. But
to go back to what this person is saying, Ronnie, we need to move it on because we've got a few.
Yeah, but what I'm saying quickly about the literature is because that is kind of something that people don't feel threatened by, because it's like lovely recipes, food on the front, recipes at the start of it. But you go to the back of that booklet and it's all about the ethical reasons for being vegan. And so I think of it as like a Trojan horse, that there's no point in trying to give a leaflet to someone or a booklet to someone if they're not going to take it. And it's something that's easy for people to take. They're grateful. They think, oh, can I really have this? Oh, thank you so much. And then get back home, look through it, and then they can be educated.
And they just cut all the recipes out and throw everything away. But anyway, would you say that in terms of this particular person, that perhaps their own, I don't want to say distorted, but their own skewed view of what activism is adding to their own kind of misgivings about?
Yes, I think that comment there should say, I have had a childhood trauma that manifests into me, and I am terrified of not being liked. So I really struggle calling people out. And I think that's what that really says, because this is what people tend to do on social media, is represent everybody. It's like the old, let's say we do the Auschwitz comparison. Most people are non-Jewish who are opposed to it and who don't like it and speak on behalf of everybody else, So I think this is more of an I rather than we comment.
Yeah, what interests me though is where they got the idea that activism was about calling people out rather than education.
What define calling people out, Roger?
Is another one, Danny, that you talked about yourself. And so they're saying that telling her to go vegan. This is somebody with quite a lot of issues. Telling her to go vegan would add incalculable and unnecessary stress to her life. Now, this is somebody empathizing with others in the way that you've kind of said that you do, Danny. So, I mean, I wonder if this person is kind of suggesting, well, I can't really be an activist because I'm going to be telling people stuff that might put an extra burden on their life. Which is true. One of the points that I made in a couple of videos that I did was that if we give them a leaflet, you are kind of giving them a bit of psychic pain, really, because you're almost like saying, do you want this leaflet, which is full of details of all the terrible things we do? I mean, that's what we do as animal activists. We say, do you want this leaflet full of really shitty things that you might not even want to know about? So I think this person is saying that I don't know who the people are that I'm going to be interacting with, and I don't want to burden them. I think that's what they're getting at.
Whoever the people are, and whatever the problems of the people there are, is nothing compared with the problems that the animals have when they're sent for slaughter, is it?
Well, of course, yeah, but I mean, they're not focused on that, clearly.
Not focused on, but the thing about this is, first of all, telling her to go vegan. It's not. We're not going to get very far by telling people to go vegan. What you do is provide people with the information, and so they make their own decision to go vegan. So first of all, it's not a good form of activism to tell someone to go vegan anyway, right? And the other thing is that they're kind of it's kind of so easy to kind of live as a vegan these days that even with someone with all these things that as have been described could still live as a vegan. And I think they can be gently given the information about it and allowed to make their own decision. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen, even with a person like that.
I personally think this is just absolute BS, because you're telling me my best friend who suffers eating disorder, PTSD, depression, that you couldn't say, do you want to try this? Do you want to try this? Would you like to try this? Did you know, by the way, this hasn't got any animals in it? Try it. And you couldn't do it gradually, And you're right, Ronnie. Nobody's telling anybody to do anything. You have a conversation with people and suggest something. I mean, put it in a human context, that would turn it all around. Would you tell that person that it's wrong to have a slave, or just because they've got an eating disorder, PTSD, depression, and suffers from suicidal ideation, you should stop being a slave over or supporting slavery because you've got these disorders?
Yeah, but let's be honest here. If they said to you, "Are you telling me I should be vegan?" What are we going to say?
Of course, well, it should be.
So then they interpret that as telling them to go vegan.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. It doesn't happen like that, and we keep using these sort of ideas.
Human psychology is very complex, and people will find ways of being offended if they want to be offended. I mean, we're very good at it.
I also think the other thing is, you see, veganism is supposed to be a healthy diet, isn't it?
Supposedly, yeah.
But the number of vegans that suddenly play the illness card when it's suggested they might do a tiny little bit of activism is kind of seems to kind of negate that, doesn't it?
You mean pull a sickie, Ronnie? You mean pull a sickie?
The number of people that pull a sickie, if you just suggest they do.
Yeah, but
hang on a minute, isn't the vegan diet supposed to be healthy?
Yeah, but
all of you non-activists are suddenly suffering from mental or physical illness that prevent you from.
We don't want to perpetuate that myth anyway, do we? I mean,
we are all human. We are all human, and we are all devious and lazy, and we have all, when we've looked outside and we've been asked to go to some sort of save movement or a cube or something, and the wind's blowing, the rain's going sideways, we've suddenly developed a hangover or something like that, a bit of a cold.
Yeah, that does happen. But that doesn't prevent
the hangover.
Yeah, I didn't say hangover. That was a Freudian slip. That was.
Yeah. Here's somebody who seems to be taking an interesting middle ground thing, because this taps into something that everybody on the panel here and everybody in the chat will recognize. The fact is that we all know that talking to your loved ones can be a real problem, and there's lots of psychology about it, and there's lots of sociology about this. Strangers, on the other hand, the animals matter more to me than anything they can say to me, which suggests that their family means more to them than the other animals, kind of thing. But we do know that it's an extra burden when you're talking to your family. We all know that. And lots of people, lots of vegan psychologists have written about this. Sociologically, it's because when you're dealing with family members, there's lots of family baggage that goes with any conversation, and especially when there's a particular problem with it, which is, generally speaking, in matters of morality, it's usually the elders of the family giving the moral lesson to the younger people. Quite often in veganism, it's the other way around, and it doesn't go down well. If you've got your 13-year-old sister telling you, you're a murderer or whatever, right? And so, yeah. So we can see this kind of stress, but I mean, this person's basically saying that they'd be okay being an activist if it's dealing with strangers, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I've often had to speak to people in the movement who are distraught that they can't get their own family to go vegan.
Hmm.
And I've said to them, well, look, just don't. The first thing not to do is to keep on at them. I mean, I made this huge mistake with with my parents. I mean, it was, people talk about, I became a vegan and my parents gave me such a hard time. But like, I became a vegan and I gave my parents such a hard time because I was on at them all the time. And it was a mistake because it just made them put up resistance.
Were you a rammer, Ronnie? Were you a rammer?
I was a rammer. I was a rammer. I was a, what's the other things? I was
a
a preacher, a rammer, and
a forcer, and a bully.
Forcer. I wasn't a bully. I don't think it's really bully, and I didn't kind of sort of get a knife out or anything to them.
I'm a bully. I'm a bully.
I kind of did go on too much, and the thing is, it's once again back to this thing about people. People have to think that it's them that's made the decision, rather than they've been browbeaten into it, because they'll put up resistance otherwise. And so that was a mistake I made. I mean, whether they'd have gone vegan if I'd just given them information and just not gone on, I kind of don't know. But that also caused stress to me. Me thinking that I had kind of this duty to continue to go on and on and on at them caused stress in me as well. And it would be better for me to have not taken that approach.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it, Ronnie? Because in terms of what Danny said, that a lot of vegans will often say, somebody nagged me, and they were quite aggressive with me, and I'm really pleased that they did because in the end type of thing. And so, in other words, we've got different personalities, as Danny was saying.
Yeah,
I think it's probably more that somebody put the idea of veganism into their head, and that's kind of how they. I think you can provide people with frequent information without it amounting to nagging or forcing or preaching or whatever. It's the way you do it.
I thought Chris here was saying that he threatened to eat his parents, but I misread it. But he said that he wouldn't eat with them. Of course, there's a lot of vegans doing that. What's that thing with the fork, Danny? You'll know.
Oh yeah, the Liberation Pledge. Yeah, the Liberation Pledge. Yeah, I mean, what Chris is saying there. I mean, even it sounds to me like, and you can put me right, Chris. It sounds to me like they're still not vegan yet, and I, of course, with my family, I'm always digging them. This is why I got the name Grumpy Vegan Grandad, because every time they gave my granddaughter a bacon sandwich, I'd tell her it was pepper. I also take her mum shopping by it. Yeah. So I'd be saying to my granddaughter, that's Peppa Pig on there. You eat Peppa Pig's been killed, and she still doesn't get the concept. But I'm always digging at my family. I go mad when the vegan stuff that's been bought for me. As opposed to their own garbage, but it's just a shame, really, because I cook for more than one person. When I cook, I've not eaten with my family for 5 years, so I always eat separate. I've got separate utensils, but they go out and buy vegan stuff for me. They find vegan stuff and come home and really delightful and happy. Say, look, I've got you some vegan this, I've got you some vegan that, but they don't participate. So it is a tough one, and I don't know how it's going to work out, how it's going to manifest. Probably one of them will get ill and say, right, I really need to sort of get my blood pressure down. How am I going to do that now, Danny? And I'll be like, well, I don't say I didn't tell you so, but here's what we're going to do. And I'm not scared about talking to loved ones, and I think I'm more abusive with my loved ones about it. Maybe I'm making a mistake, but I don't think twice. I'm more careful with strangers.
Yeah, you're doing it the other way around.
Yeah,
exactly.
The thing is, I'll say to people if they're having a problem with their family, I'll say, look, it may be that your family are people that never go vegan, but try not to let that get to you too much. Still carry on going out there trying to educate other people, because like when vegans are in charge, your families are going to have to eat vegan anyway, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So don't get too stressed about your family, and don't, try to do your best, but don't stress over it, and just go out and try. Don't kind of let the fact that your family won't go vegan stop you from trying to educate non-family people to go vegan.
Correct.
Now this one's an interesting one because they almost like suggest that, well, they were at it years ago, but as the decades pass, kind of thing. There's a lot to do behind the scenes, which is true, and so this taps into what Danny was saying before, preempting everything as he did, including donation funds to relevant organisations. Now, I would be wary of this because it's one thing to donate to relevant people, like indeed Danny, or to a grassroots organisation. But heaven forbid that they're probably thinking, oh well, I'll just send a donation to Peter, or worse still, Mercy for Animals, the organisation with the worst name ever. And so this is the problem. There's no the giving scene in the movement is that if you are in the situation where you say, well, I can't be on the front line, but I can support it, they will. The immediate effect then is that people will donate to the big organizations, the ones that are rich already. And I've always had a problem with that, which is, so as soon as I saw that, I thought, yeah, but which organization are you talking about? Are you talking about Ronnie Lee's grassroots thing? Or are you talking about some big corporation who are rich already compared? It's the same with the individuals. Why would you donate to people who are already getting loads when there's other people out there who are not,
The other thing is, I was going to say, it can be conscience money, can't it? I'm going to give money in lieu of doing something myself, whereas it'd be far better if that person kind of became active, even in a small way, than think that they could,
let's be charitable and say that, there's reasons why they can't now. And so it would be good then that if you are giving to people in order for them, the proxy thing that Danny was on about, that's a good thing. If if there are reasons why you can't do it.
We've had it locally. I mean, we run adverts on social media promoting veganism. We target, people in our local media that overwhelmingly will be non-vegans, and try to get them to visit vegan websites, and it has been very successful. Now, the more we have to pay for those, the more money we get, the more we can run. And so, people giving something like that would be highly effective. And that's a kind of local grassroots thing. So there's sometimes where it can actually be very effective for people to give financial support.
But does it matter if does it really matter though? I mean, does it matter if that person feels like they're making a contribution and they see something? I mean, giving you money, you don't give money lightly, especially not nowadays anyway. And that person who wants to give money to a certain person or a certain organization, they think that organization is doing a good thing, whether you think it is or not. Rog, is like, does that really matter? Is that really a bad thing? Either way, I mean, that advert on primetime TV with the pig with the knife, was it Viva advert? Now, if people stop giving to Viva because it's a massive rich organization, that TV advert would never have gone live, would it? So,
well, yeah,
is it really a bad thing?
All I'd say about that is on the two examples, if you give to Mercy for Animals, then this is an organization that over the last 5 years has spent $11 million on promoting cage-free rather than veganism. So there's a problem there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you give to some of the rich influencers, say, the danger there is that if they're paying tax, the richer they get, the more tax they pay, and that means they're giving more money to vivisection and to things like that, and even the meat industry. And so you are actually better to keep things small and grassroots. That's the safest thing to do.
Yeah, so give your money to me, people. Give it to me.
Yeah, I'd say that. Give it to Dan. Don't give it to we cannot. We don't have to name them. They're rich already. There's no need.
I'll just put proviso on that. Please don't send me money. Send it to a sanctuary. I don't need money. I'm a rich trucker. I'm absolutely loaded until they get 30,000 truck drivers into the UK.
Was that a typo, Danny? Rich trucker? Was that a typo?
Yeah. Thanks, Roger. Yeah. So yeah, please don't send me money. No, send it to sanctuaries. I'd rather sanctuaries have the money than myself.
This is a weird one. I mean, we could talk forever about this weird one. Other people should be allowed to make their own decisions. Well, yeah.
you're allowed to influence that decision, no?
Well, quite. Yeah. I mean, why would somebody use this as an argument against being active?
I mean, how can you make a decision when you haven't got both sides of the argument?
Well, all the time that as I said earlier, that people have been bombarded with advertising, from the meat industry and the dairy industry, aren't they, and the egg industry? So all we're doing is countering that and giving people, alternative information.
Yeah, so Chris is backing up what I said. It's like if you stop contributing towards these massive. Oh, what's going on here? I thought we'd all frozen then.
No, I think we were just very still.
Wow.
we were listening to your eloquent.
I couldn't see you, so I couldn't see any feedback from anybody. So I'm used to people freezing, especially where Ronnie's concerned with his crap internet. So yeah, Chris is backing up what I said, and it's like, just because a company is big and rich, it doesn't mean you stop supporting them, because that's the whole point.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't mean the thing is, we don't need big and rich organisations.
Why?
To educate? Well, we don't need them to educate people to be big. We need a source of information, obviously, to give to people. But
hold on a minute, Ronnie, let me stop you there, right? I'm really sorry, but you've just said that you use money to put adverts on Facebook and social media, correct?
Yeah, but hold
on a minute. I'm calling you out here. Hold on, stop there. So you could do with more money to put more adverts on the internet, correct?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. So what do you mean then?
He doesn't need a fortune, and he doesn't need 50.
Yes, but he'd love a fortune. So if he had a fortune and got really big, he could make a massive impact.
But big companies. No, but you're better off. What I'd much prefer to see is lots of active vegan groups all over the country, all being, financially supported by local people, so that they can all do that sort of thing, rather than
what if we pooled a big company and they did that, like say Anonymous for the Voiceless, say, who became quite big and then have done that and have funded grassroots projects, the Cube, the Anonymous for the Voiceless. So,
but you see, if someone in our local area, for instance, who had some money to spare and wanted to put money into promoting veganism, right? If they had the choice between sending that money to a big centralized organization or giving it to us so we can improve our local outreach, I would say it's far better for them to donate to the local grassroots group, because one thing, we haven't got the overheads, we haven't got staff to pay, we haven't got offices to upkeep. All that money would go directly into outreach.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of helping other animals, giving it to a small group, it's going to get to where it's supposed to be. Giving it to a large corporation, it's going to trickle down through all the ramifications of that, the staff, the officers, the electricity bills, and all the thing of being a corporation. So that is true. Plus the fact, if Ronnie gets more and more and more, what he'd do, he'd start giving his money away to encourage other people to do. I mean, it's like if we all won the lottery, we'd fund our own group, but we'd also want to try and help people. We'd become a fund ourselves, wouldn't we? Because
no, I'd be off to Jamaica, mate. I'd be gone.
Yeah, isn't it somewhere else to go?
Coming out now, folks.
I'd do internet activism.
Blue in the comments.
You'd be putting it into some cryptocurrency, wouldn't you, or something? But the thing is, no. If I had, I mean, I wouldn't win the lottery, because I don't do the lottery, because the lottery is a tax on the poor and it's unethical.
Well, yeah.
Now, and that should come from taxing the rich if we want to fund these projects, not from taxing the poor. But anyway, there's
every word.
Yeah, there we are. But if I was to come into a load of money, what I would like to do is I would try to seed the setting up of local active
Yeah.
vegan groups in different towns and cities. You know, that's kind of how I
And
would
don't forget
do with
Ireland,
that.
Ronnie.
Well, also in Ireland, well, throughout the world, but Ireland, I mean, yeah, I mean, then these places are needed. I mean, I'd give you a few Bob Rogers so you could do it in Ireland.
Thanks.
Make sure
Thanks.
you were all right, like, you know, out of the vast fortune that I'd somehow win when I don't enter in anything where I can win money. But if someone suddenly gave me a load of money, perhaps. Yeah.
Now this one is a vegetarian who's bought it. I mean, vegetarians come out with all kinds of weird stuff, and this person has really internalized some of the anti-vegan arguments here. You know, and so they're basically saying we don't want animal rights, we want animal welfare, but you can treat them okay and everything, but we don't want to wipe them out as though vegans do. I mean,
I mean, it's based on bad science anyway, because all the animals that we use for food have come from wild ancestors or ancestors that are free living beings, and those animals are still around in the world. And they may be in small numbers, and their habitats and everything need to be protected. But we still have, there are still, cows that live free in the wild. There's still pigs, aren't there? There are still sheep. There are still hens. There's still fowl, aren't there? Animals in that country. These animals, they still exist in the wild, and so they wouldn't be. What we've done is selectively bred all these animals. Like we've bred cows, or humans have bred cows with huge udders. They, bred these animals so that they're, a lot larger than they were originally, because that provides more meat and more profit. These animals still exist in the wild, and so they wouldn't actually die out. And the thing is that having these animals on farms, farming them for food, is actually threatening, their wild relatives, because of the damage caused to the environment by animal farming is actually threatening the what you might call the wild free living versions of those animals. You see, so it's doing the opposite. It's doing the opposite of what this person is like claiming, in a sense.
Yeah, the worst thing about this thing is that the word today is both right and wrong, because if the world did stop eating, because they always say this, if the world went vegan overnight, there would be chaos, which is true. But the world is never going to go vegan overnight, sadly. But if it did, we would have a major logistic problem.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No, but we would have a huge problem, because we'd have literally billions of other animals to try and see out their lives, and then obviously we'd probably try to prevent them from breeding, which is problematic, and all the rest of it. But I mean, this is the kind of thing that anti-vegans say, and this vegetarian is kind of
and it's a nonsense argument on several levels, isn't it? And so this person's been a vegetarian, so he's kind of going against what he said above. So the whole thing doesn't make any sense, does it? And it's through people not thinking, deeply enough about the situation. Taking a very kind of surface view of things.
I've got 10 minutes before my internet.
Yeah, I was just about to say we've got about 10 minutes left. We got about 10 minutes left. So the first one here is almost like the role model thing, and that came up a lot in this chat. The best thing to do is be a vegan role model and don't force it on people and this kind of stuff. I mean, look, you can't bulldoze it into people's lives. So there's that one. And then the other one was a point that you made again, Danny, again preempting everything, was that this person kind of lives a long way from anybody else, and so therefore they're really isolated as vegans. And of course, nowadays, especially in a small country like Britain, for example, and Ireland, we're not used to the idea that we could be. I mean, they're claiming that they're 1,000 miles away from a single friend. I mean, blimey, So I mean, they're kind of suggesting that they're in rural kind of
It's in America, isn't it? Republicanville.
North America,
It's probably
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Donald Trump land, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, for a start, I find that difficult to believe that there's not another vegan within 1,000 miles of that person. Right, that's the first thing. Secondly,
it's not only that; it's a single friend.
A single friend. So I mean, you know, they haven't got a friend. I mean, that's not really to do with veganism. It's to do with them. I mean, maybe they kind of need to have a shower occasionally or something, perhaps. But it's that's kind of really weird. You haven't got a single friend. That's kind of not. That just seems like strange.
Maybe they don't have a friend.
They probably live off grid and live in some obscure Canadian.
Yeah, but the thing is that there will be other vegans within 1,000 miles of them. There's bound to be. And the thing is, of course, we've got the internet, and so you can form, you know, friendships.
Well, it sounds to me like this person is isolated. Full stop. From anybody, so it doesn't matter who they're isolated from. They're isolated.
Not just other vegans. It don't have a single friend. Let's go back to the first one. This is quite interesting one. We all have to have our own light bulb moments. Okay, well that's your seed being planted. It doesn't go and go bang. You know, very few people go bang vegan. You know, I know a lot of vegans claim that they watch a particular documentary or a particular speech and they went vegan on the spot. It tends to be even those people, because I've spoken to a lot of people who make that claim, and it turns out not to be completely true. That it tends to be a bit of a process, even if they've had this big kind of moral shock and they go, blimey, but you can still find that 8 months down the road, they're still working at it, that kind of thing. So, but that's all about planting seeds. But then you see the language here again, you can't bulldoze and you can't force it.
Yeah, but you
see, again, it's a misreading, isn't it? They're using a distorted version of activism in order not to be an activist.
Yeah, because I think what it is, they don't want to be an activist, and they're thinking of how can I find some excuse not to be an activist? Because that's not true. Because forcing and bulldozing activism, you know, good activism certainly isn't about that. And you know, there are loads of really good activists that don't force or bulldoze. They're just very, very consistent and determined in providing information.
And Chris makes a good point here, because I mean, I know Chris is on TikTok. TikTok is a brilliant way of talking to the public. It really gets you out of the vegan bubble. So I agree very much with this point here.
Yeah, we put videos on my local vegan group. We put videos on TikTok. And you know, they're watched by, you know, we've had 600-700 people watch them, and how we do that is through hashtags, and a lot of those people won't be vegan, and so it's kind of you can do it that way, and that is another way of doing it.
Now this one is almost like tapping into burnout, really. Vegan for 12 years, and they don't say anything anymore, only if I'm asked. They've almost like said that they were quite, you know, active, maybe a bit forceful and all that. But I've learned that people don't care. And there's another one coming up if we get to it, which says the same type of thing. You know, people don't care about them apart from pets. And so this is the kind of person who's kind of a little bit worn out, it sounds, doesn't it?
But they're worn out because they've done things to wear themselves out, and you don't need to do that. I mean, I don't do it these days. You know, I'm not as young as I was. I haven't got the energy that I used to have. So I act in accordance with that. I tend to do kind of more gentle, easy-going, non-stressful things. But you can still do a load, you know, like delivering leaflets, leaving leaflets in public places, you know, doing a stall where you're all very pleasantly and smiling people, you know, giving them information, giving them recipes. None of that's really stressful. None of that's stressful. None of it's forcing. And yet, you know, people are going to go vegan because of that, because that's how we all went vegan.
Look at the language in the second one, Ronnie and Danny. It's terrible. Lecture people who will never be receptive to the message.
But
it's so loaded, that statement.
It's so negative, because people obviously are receptive to the message. How did we become vegan? How did they become vegan? They were receptive to a message. They received information. They received a message and they went vegan. So if they received a message and they went vegan, then the same can happen to other people. It's not going to happen to everyone, right? But it's bound to happen to other people. And so all you've got to do is just keep plugging away with that. It needn't be difficult. It needn't be stressful. It needn't be unpleasant.
There's Jennifer making a point that we've had. I'm just going to move on now, Ronnie, because we've only got a few minutes.
Chris Hines needs to keep his clothes on TikTok as well. No wonder he got 500k reach if he's going to do disgusting things like that. If you've not seen his video, people.
So this is saying that, again, it's about preaching.
Oh God.
So
be Jesus.
But once again, I think vegangelism is a good word, isn't it?
I like it.
I mean, I'm quite happy to be a vegangelist. In other words, someone that does my best to spread the vegan message. But I kind of want to spread it in a way that's receptive to people, and that isn't forcing or bullying, of course. But
look at the second one, Ronnie. It says here, "Who feels comfortable being imposed?" Well, again, they're using the language of the other side almost. You're forcing us.
Are they?
I don't want to impose on anybody. I don't want to, force them. I don't want to preach at them. And
you see, I'd ask a question or a couple of questions about that. Is first of all, do they really believe that is what outreach is all about, or are they making out that is what outreach is all about in order to provide themselves with an excuse not to do it?
I agree with the last one. It is, and
Pete,
and it sounds to me like Roger keeps saying, it's like the anti-vegan argument. They'll find any excuse, however ludicrous, to get out of doing something.
But what are these people doing instead of gently spreading the vegan message? What is so important in their lives that is more important than doing something that will bring about animal liberation, that will end the massacre of billions of animals, that will end the slaughter of 50,000 animals every second for the food industry? What is it in their life that's more important?
It's a good question to ask them. This other one is a kind of role model thing. Again, push down people's throats. The same language. It's really interesting. They've internalized the language of our opponents.
That's it.
The more you push, the more barrier you will create. Well, but the more you educate, the more people learn. I mean, you could put that line that way.
Absolutely.
Why put it so negatively?
It's education, and education is you don't educate anyone by forcing stuff down their throat. You educate people by providing them with information, don't you? And that's what it's all about. And as I've said, are they deliberately distorting it to suit what they want to do, or probably more accurately to suit what they don't want to do?
Yeah. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to move on. This one I'm going to have to readjust the screen a little bit. Oh yeah, this is another kind of person who was kind of given up a little bit, And again, I suppose that might. Like everybody thinks that it's going to be done in 18 months, when you start, and then you realize you're in for a long haul. And some people are probably just not, they haven't got stamina perhaps, so maybe that's what this is saying.
But it's not, that they must have been going about it the wrong way. People.
Well, again, personalities though, Ronnie, there's personalities. So.
But the thing is, I've never...
I've never met a vegan who could do it well, meaning be an activist, I think.
Yeah. Shove it. Well, you could say, I've never met a vegan who could do it well. How do you do it? Try to shove it down someone's throat? What are they talking about? Is this something else?
And then the second one is that the reference to that vegan is, that vegan, the one who won't shut up, that vegan who always tells you that vegan who's a pain in the arse. And that vegan is an embarrassment to vegans. That's a lot of the comments were that if you're one of these purists and extremists, and these words were used, especially extremists, then you're embarrassing us. So why would we want to join your activism? Because they're embarrassed by it. They're too
They're
shy.
getting the wrong. Yeah, they got the wrong impression though of activism, or they've deliberately formulated the wrong impression of activism. I mean, I kind of knew someone once that really used to, really kind of go on and on at people, and it would and
It was you, wasn't it?
It was, well, it was me with my parents, yes, but this was a person that we'd be on a coach, like maybe going to World Day. This was back in the day when, a lot of campaigners, say against vivisection, weren't vegan, right? And this particular person would be on a coach, going down to London, and she'd go around like looking at everyone's sandwiches and looking at what everyone had in their tea. And then anyone having milk in their tea should just kind of go on about them. Are you aware of the calf? Are you aware of the cow? It's disgusting, and all that. And I think, oh, no, because that was just, all right, give that person a leaflet. Say, well, look, I've noticed you're having milk in your tea. Would you like one of these leaflets? Thank you very much. It wasn't that. It was like constantly going on. And
that's not going to work, Ronnie. You've got to call him a fucking scumbag.
Yeah, well, she almost did, you see. And the thing is that I sort of felt, well, the problem is that, she was going about that in a way that was likely to cause that person to put up resistance rather than educate them. Occasionally,
it's 8:30. So do we want to wrap up and make our final statements?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make one last statement on that, and it's this. I'm going to use northern terminology, so cover your ears if they bleed easily. And as far as certain vegans going too far and being horrible to people and everything, you're always going to get knobheads in every pack. You're always going to get the odd idiot, and it can't be avoided. And if people out there want to class everybody by one person's actions, then it's just the way it is. But in all the conversations, in all the 5 years I've been active, I've only ever heard two people turn around and say, I don't care about animals, I'm going to carry on eating animals, I really don't give a shit. All the other people that give us arguments and excuses, it's there ready for change. And that's the way I see it. It's the ones that either walk away quietly and say nothing, or the ones that say, I truly do not give a shit. And them are the only lost causes that I can see. So, yeah, I suppose that's my summing up, really, is, there's you'll always get an idiot in the bunch. You'll always find people who are too lazy.
It's not the philosopher's fault that there's knobheads.
Yeah. most of the philosophers are knobheads as well half the time. So
no.
But yeah, I'm gonna have to go now. But yeah.
We'll all go. Thanks both of you. Well, do you want to say a final sentence? A sentence, Ronnie.
Well, I'd like to say I want to address my remarks to vegans watching this who aren't activists. Now, if you're a vegan, you're a genuine vegan. You're a vegan because you care about the animals. You're a vegan because you want animal liberation. Now, we're only going to get animal liberation if we're able to educate a substantial number of people to go vegan. And so if you really want animal liberation, then surely it's important that you play your part in that. It needn't be difficult, it needn't be stressful, it can be as easy as helping at a stall or giving out leaflets or delivering leaflets or something really simple like that. So I'd urge, if you really want animal liberation, then it's like really being important to, play a part in that. And you'll also feel that, you've done something really valuable in your life, that you've been, part of this monumental struggle. You've played an effective part in a monumental struggle to free other animals from oppression. So that's what I'd say to non-active vegans, to get active even in a small way.
And me and Danny will say,
if all vegans, you're all well, yeah, you're not the only people that have said that, so I'm used to it.
No, just because vegans, not you, right?
No. Sorry, I'm so used to being Louise.
I wouldn't call you a knobhead.
I would.
not to your face. Right, thanks everybody for tuning in. We really got to go because Danny's about to get invaded.
And get
Yeah,
out there
but-
and
yeah.
get out there and promote veganism.
I'd just like to say one thing before we do go, Roger. I know I'm the one who's trying to end this, but I'd just like to say to everybody out there is like, the ones that walk away quiet, they're the lost causes. Anybody who argues with you is vocal, shouts, uses every excuse under the book. They're prime targets. They're the people you will change. So don't give up. Never give up.
Well, the ones who quietly walk away as well, you've still planted the old seed.
Yeah.
It just takes a bit of germination for some people,
Maybe.
And it's a little bit like that vegan teacher. Let's talk about her. I mean, she talks about you need 100 clicks. It's my jigsaw analogy. You've got to put all the pieces in place. One thing on its own tends not to be the thing. So your conversation on the street could be their 99th click. So so could be their 100th click.
Listen, thank you for having me on anyway, and it's great to chat with you guys and everybody who's been on the comments and joined the stream. Thank you.
Yes, thanks everybody. Take care,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone. Take
Peace.
care. Cheers. Bye everyone. Bye.